Okay. Hi, good morning, Kevin.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Doing well.
Doing well?
Good
All
to be
right.
here.
So, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for being here today.
You're most welcome.
Yes. And I appreciate your time for allowing me to conduct this interview as part of my class requirements.
Well, I'm very happy to help out a fellow teacher.
Oh, thank you. So before I will jump into the proper interview, I just would like to ask some initial questions, right? So, would that be okay?
Sure, that's fine.
So, Kevin, how long have you been staying in South Korea, and who is with you here?
Well, I've been here about 24 years.
Wow, 24 years, that long.
Yeah, I came in 95 first and lived in Jeonju. And
Yeah,
then 1998, I came here. So then I met my wife a couple years later, and we have 3 beautiful children. And adults. So.
And adults.
And adults.
You're so blessed, right? Okay, can you tell us a bit of background of your stay here with your family?
Well, my kids, one of the big questions here is, are your kids going to go into an international school, or are your kids going to go, where are they going to study? I'm a teacher from California, and I'm very satisfied with the elementary school system, so we just put our children in Korean public school. And I'm very satisfied. They've done well. I know other people have different struggles.
Yes. But in your case?
In our case,
they're okay.
a little bullying, but we handle it.
Right?
Most of it's handled.
Do they speak both English and Korean?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
They're bilingual.
Bilingual. All right. So being a foreigner staying in South Korea, what is the sort of difficulty have you encountered while living here?
When I first came here, of course, I knew very little Korean. There was one class I took, so I learned the alphabet and I could read. 안녕하세요, 감사합니다.
That's it.
That's all that was needed, because when I came here, the World Cup was being prepared for. Taxi drivers, housewives, everybody wanted to study English. Nobody cared about my Korean. Not important.
Not important.
And frankly, there were not classes really available. Or today. Classes are everywhere.
Everywhere.
You walk into the village office and you say, I need a Korean class. They have to find somebody for you.
Yes.
So,
and even they offer free, right?
Yeah.
Free programs.
Yeah. So today it's a lot more convenient if you're a foreigner learning the language. But over time, I had to just pick up what I could. So my listening skills are good. Speaking,
Okay, anyways, thank you for that. What is the primary language that you use in communicating the fact that you're here in South Korea?
At home, I still use English because I think it's important to reinforce. My kids are bilingual. So I'm the English speaker, my wife's the Korean speaker, and we work together. Outside, it depends on the people I meet. If I'm out shopping, people in the neighborhood know me, and I know enough Korean. I can go shopping, ask how much it is, or where's this, what's that. So I do, outside of the house, use a lot of Korean, low-level Korean.
Yes, yeah, the basic, okay. At least, right? You can.
One of my students last week, he heard my class and he ordered me a book because I asked what foreign words influence Korean language. And so we're pretty close. He's 75, so we're really he's like an uncle or something.
Yes, for you.
But he sent me this book and I thought, oh, it's all Korean. I'm embarrassed. I can't understand it all, so I better learn to read a few pages so I can tell him, thank you. But that was really great, because if I look through the book, I will understand a lot more about the Korean language. Because I use it actually academically. Because I teach I teach children, but I also teach adults. So
All age levels, right?
All age levels. Cradle to grave.
Cradle to grave.
Cradle to
Okay.
grave.
That's a good expression. All right. So your preferred language is English, right? And but what is really your native language? I mean,
English is my native language.
American English.
Yeah.
We have different kinds of.
Oh,
Englishes.
okay, yeah, no, you're
Right.
yeah, there.
We have
Mine
British
is now
English,
international English.
international English. Like
That's pretty. I keep forgetting about that. Oh yeah, no, I would be classified American.
Yes, because we have different kinds of English.
However,
Yeah.
I'm teaching in Korea. Well, actually, even when I went to school, we learned British slang. We learned this is American English, this is British English. So I learned in middle school and high school because I was in advanced English.
Wow.
So, having friends from the Philippines, I've learned, different ways that English is used.
Yes.
I've traveled to India and learned, and English is so diverse.
Diverse, yes.
These days in conversation class, there's Konglish. And
Yes,
there's
Konglish.
Korean English.
Oh.
So when I'm teaching, I distinguish. Konglish is definitely, my opinion, Konglish is Korean English mistakes.
Oh, okay.
Those are the ones that are
Mistakes, right?
glaringly wrong connection. No connection. Other words like hybrid words, those are developed in Korean using English and Korean. Just like English takes foreign words. Just like every other country adapts. So there's a distinguishing mark between Korean English, which is you just have to get used to it. And then mistakes that are common.
That's why my student usually ask me, "Oh, teacher, is this right?" Because I think it's Konglish, like this.
Right.
I think it's Konglish, and I want to make it like, can you correct it like that?
One of the biggest mistakes, one of the famous banks in Korea made a credit card.
Credit card? Okay.
She's card.
She's card.
She's card.
Okay.
And when I saw that, her card or my card, it's not she's card.
It should be her card.
So that's 100% Konglish.
Konglish, yes.
And, from that mistake, because it was a nationwide national bank, you have she's bar, she's dress shop, she's this, and it's like, super Konglish, and it really gets me. So, advertisers are very important. They need to know English.
All right. So, Nero, can you tell us specific difficulty you have experienced considering the language barrier in communication?
Well, you frequently run into them. One specific irritating situation. I went into a coffee shop in the neighborhood, and I was politely using Korean, but I was not using the correct level or the honorific position or something.
Okay.
But my listening is really good, and the women behind the counter said, "Oh, it's cute. He speaks like a child." And I was so angry.
Upset, right, about that.
I mean, I understand that. I mean, even in an English situation, we would do the same thing, but never gossip in front of the person.
Like
you
in front of you.
don't know what they know.
Yes. But your listening is really good, right?
I think so, yeah, and especially in context. If we're, one thing I do like is I can turn off the Korean. If it's boring, I'll think in English. But something it's interesting, okay, let's do this. Recently, I have learned. I have a student that I work with, and he's elementary school kid. His English is really good. He never studied outside of Korea.
Wow.
He does make some mistakes, but he's a movie watcher. And recently, we've been watching Korean movies, and he's seen more movies than I have, I think. And
at that young age.
At the young age. So we just finished a movie, and I keep telling myself I need to watch more Korean movies with the subtitles because I know when there's a mistake in the language, when they don't translate it right or why. But I'm finding in the movies I learn a lot more about Korean cultural language use and some very funny ways, but some more appropriate ways to handle a situation. So I think it's really important to watch Korean dramas.
Yeah, that it would help you.
It really, I've been impressed. Okay, yes, you can watch another Korean movie, English subtitles.
Alright, so what coping mechanisms or strategies you have been using?
Well, it just goes back. Well, we all have our smartphones.
Yeah.
So
we have translators like Papago.
Yeah, I use
using that.
I use a Google Translate. Google Translate is greatly improved.
Oh.
It's greatly improved. Several years ago, it was garbage.
Yes.
But they probably stole Papago. Can I say that?
Yeah, it's okay. You can say that.
But definitely rely on that. I also, there are some situations where if I am having trouble communicating with somebody, I will call a friend, a Korean friend. Hey, can you help? Sorry to bother you, but I'm in the city office and they don't have a translator or somebody doesn't speak English.
So you need to call a friend or someone.
Sometimes I'll call a friend for sure.
Okay. So as you know, I noticed also that you told me about the honorific, the imnida, like yo or something. So I think that people strongly affected their native language. Right. In Korean, they constantly think that about to whom you're addressing with. Yeah. In terms of age, social, level standing, which I have, right? So
and bringing that to a point, one of the issues too. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a lot of sexism involved, and
the gender
problems,
and what else?
Racial problems.
Okay.
It's sad but true.
But it's true.
I've had many Filipino friends, and that dealing with their mother-in-laws.
Oh yeah, that one.
You need to so sorry to hear this situation. Oh my gosh. When I got married, my in-laws are much older. My wife comes from a large family, and she's one of the younger children. So everybody said, you have to speak this way. You have to memorize all this high-level stuff. In my brain is, how can I do this? And when I met my father-in-law, he was sitting on the front porch, traditional Korean Hanok house. And I walk in, he's sitting there on the porch like this, and he just stands up, puts his hands up, how you doing?
What?
And my brain just disappeared, everything emptied. Nobody told me he spoke English.
How you're doing? Wow.
And he had learned English during the Korean War because he worked with the American military and did other things. He wanted to be a translator. So his hobby his whole life, Japanese, English, Korean language study. Wow. But that was one of the things that really hit me is the honorific stuff out the window. Yeah. Out the window. Yeah, trash. So, but these days, I have. Oh, actually, another time my mother came to Korea. When my mother came to Korea, the neighborhood treated me differently. I was not just a foreign teacher. I was the first son, and my mother was with me. It was like night and day. The older women in the community, just different look, different like treatment.
Treatment to you.
More respect. It was so noticeable. You can't forget that.
It's because you're with your mom, right?
Because I'm with my mother.
Yes, that's how they.
It was
culture.
Yeah. But these days, now that I'm older, I can relax a little because I've passed the hump and I'm getting the honorific stuff.
You're getting it.
The first time I was offered a seat on the bus is when I realized, oh, my age is showing. And I'm not
on the bus, right?
Yeah.
We're like, okay. So does language shape thought, or is our thought changed when we speak a different language?
Absolutely, especially between English and Korean.
Okay.
Because the grammar structure is opposite.
Yes. In Korean, you know, like always the verb is at the last.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For example, I go to school.
Right.
Right? In English it should be always subject, verb, and object.
Yeah.
But in Korean, subject, object, verb, and
right.
It's grammatically different.
And of course, when I first was learning Korean and listening and everything, you make the first mistake because you're thinking English grammar. When you think English grammar, they say something and you go, yeah, I know what you mean. And then you find out, no, it's the absolute opposite. So I had to tell myself, okay, when they say something and you think you hear it, then it's the opposite. And then you're okay. So.
All right. Well, also, I think every single language is structurally unique.
Yeah.
Okay, so from learning another language, I have learned to think in different ways. Do you also think about that? Like you're thinking different ways when you're learning a language?
Yes.
Do you know, I know you know a little bit of Korean. Do you know any other language?
Spanish. Russian. So I'm certainly not fluent in anything, but I studied enough German. When I went to Germany, my German friend was so surprised because I could read and understand all the signs and everything. I've actually given directions in Spanish
in
to
Spanish.
some.
Hola, mi amigo, like that, you know. Philippines are also really into Spanish as well because they conquered our first like 333 years.
Right.
And then even my name. I have a Spanish family name, Abanyo.
Oh, okay.
Came from my great-great-grandfather. Yeah, and my great-great-grandmother, the other side is Chinese.
Well, that's something for me, as I have many Filipino friends, that I've really enjoyed the history and surprising it's like, wow, so... one special thing that I learned was during a baptism ceremony.
Oh yeah, the baptism.
How long a child's name's going to be? Good night.
My name is...
What's your full name?
Lizelle Joy Felisario Abanyo. What about yours?
Just Kevin Joseph Pope.
Why Pope?
Actually,
is it a Pope like family name?
Pope is my family name, but it's actually my stepfather's name that I took over. He did not adopt me, but because my birth name is Kevin Joseph Smith, my real father, Kevin James Smith, and my mother had difficulty with the Kevin Smith part, so I went from a Smith, which is a low-level job and hard work,
but I like
to a Pope.
I like the Pope.
So Pope's actually a British name, and so it does come from England, but it's just a name I took over. But it kind of fits my life.
Yes.
So I kind of like it.
You're a Pope. All right. So, do you support the idea that language determines and shapes the way you think?
In many ways, yes. I think not only language, of course, there are other issues involved, but language is a big part of how people process and think and get along. My children, I have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. My boys have one way of thinking and processing, and my daughter is different.
She's the other way, right?
And certainly nothing wrong, it's just different. The boys process things sometimes a little faster, but they're sloppy.
Sloppy.
My oldest son I call the rabbit.
Rabbit?
And my daughter I call the turtle.
Oh, yes.
Because she is slow and steady, and she will win the race.
How old is she?
She is 17.
17?
My oldest son is 19, and my youngest is 14.
They're all teenagers.
Yes.
All right, so Kevin, is it true that I mean, when people learn another language, they learn the way they think of the speakers? I mean, do you agree that if we have affinity towards the people speaking their language,
okay,
it would help us acquire that language easily?
If we learn, like when I teach English, I tell my students, listen, how does a baby learn a language? First 2 years, listening. Second, they start playing with writing. They copy. They speaking and stuff. Then they play with writing, and lastly, reading. So I have a very different approach to my education style, because so many times they just shove grammar. Everybody who likes grammar?
Yes,
except people who major or have a doctorate.
Actually, in our academy, we don't teach grammar. The foreigners, like Koreans, because they have their own way of teaching grammar. Right?
Yeah.
But if it's really needed, just only basic or like simple ones, so we can handle that. But I think they're more focused into like, you know, SAT, Korean SAT grammar.
They're still focused on tests.
Yes, tests. That's it. And they're lacking of like this, you know, how the way they speak, they write, how the way they write it.
When I began learning Korean, I found a book that was so excellent, because this is what it dealt with this issue. When we learn Korean, okay, you learn the alphabet, learn to read, throw some words, and then you get grammar instruction. It's not, you know, that turns everybody off. But what this book that I found was also introducing Chinese background character.
Oh.
You know the name?
The Hanja, right?
Yeah.
Chinese, yes.
And, you know, even the name Ulsan. San, the symbol for the mountain, is just a line and 3 sticks. You know, that's a mountain. Yeah. But it was teaching you the way Koreans learn the language. And that's I find a more valid methodology. Is I always encourage English learners, read children's books.
Yes.
And when my children were young, we had many English books, but we had Korean books too. So I studied Korean language by reading the Korean children's stories. Of course, you know, I'd find the ones that are, you know, there's a popular one, the Horangi and Gokam,
they have
the tiger
like,
and the
tiger,
persimmon, dried persimmon.
Yes,
so I learned to read the story in English, so I know the story, but then struggle through and practice. You know, as my children got older, Dad, your pronunciations, you know, well, you tell me, teach me,
teach me, yeah.
But learning through those children's books, children's stories, and those are basic steps that will help you build. It does take a little longer, but I think the foundation is strong. With, you know, the affinity.
Yeah, affinity words.
The love and concern and care. Once you embrace the culture and dig a little deeper into building the relationship, your foundation is much stronger.
And I think it would also allow us to understand, you know, various nuances, right, of the different languages and cultures.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. So thank you so much, Kevin, for your time today.
So A+.
Thank you, A+. Okay.